Hello, this is Jason, and today I want to talk about the dragon fruit that I'm growing in my backyard orchard. I have 3 pots that I want to talk about today. In each pot, I have 4 dragon fruits growing. I do have a few duplicates, so I have 10 varieties total out of a total of 12 spots. I've created a new dragon fruit trellis each year for the past 3 years. So this is 3 years old right here. This is 2 years old here in the middle, and then this one in the background I created and planted last year. I am seeing some significant growth. I have learned quite a bit about the structure and growing dragon fruit that I want to share with you. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different varieties. I've used a marker to label each of the different stems. I also had these little metal labels, but the labels faded. However, when I write directly on the dragon fruit, that has been the most successful for me. When the dragon fruit grows upwards and it starts to turn into this tangled mess up here at the top, I will start to label some of the more prolific varieties. That way I can keep track of what the fruit is. So for example, I had quite a bit of Cosmic Charlie fruiting, and so you can actually see some of the old spots there where the fruit was last year. And I went ahead and I labeled that particular branch just to make it easier on me to identify the fruit for knowing what variety I'm eating, but also for cross-pollination purposes. Let's go ahead, let's take a look at the varieties. So right here in the foreground, I have G2. I have Cosmic Charlie there in the background. Over on this side, I have 2 physical graffitis. One of these could potentially be replaced if I find another variety that I like, but currently I'm growing 2 physical graffitis. Over here, I have a yellow Pelora. I love the yellow variety, so I made sure to plant 2 of those. I have one here and one on the right-hand side. I also have Sugar Dragon, and then over here on the back side, I have Diego's Desert King Seedling. If we go over to my newest pot, I have Purple Haze right here in the foreground. Circling around, I have Voodoo Child. Voodoo Child is maybe because of its location, it gets the most amount of shade. It has not quite made its way up yet. Still a young dragon fruit right there. And then over on the opposite side, I have Dark Star and I have G2. So yes, I have G1 and G2. They're growing in separate pots, but I'm really curious to see if there's any difference between the 2 and if they're worth growing full time. A little bit about the structures. When I started growing dragon fruit, this wooden trellis that you put in a large pot and bring up to about the 5-foot mark, and then you create the square, that was all the rage. So I went ahead, I followed the trend, and I've learned quite a bit since I created these trellises. First thing that I want to mention is that no matter how many screws you put into this, eventually the weight of the dragon fruit, which is pretty significant, will cause the top part of the trellis to start to bend and wobble. In fact, over here, the Sugar Dragon variety, which is growing like a weed. I have to constantly trim Sugar Dragon back, otherwise it would completely take over. Sugar Dragon and Diego's Desert King Seedling are the most prolific as far as new growth is concerned, and so I've had to add a support underneath here, and this was just some scrap 4x4 that I put underneath and cut at a 45-degree angle to prop up this part, because this was starting to bend downwards under the weight of the dragon fruit branches. Of course, the more balanced you have your structure, the more distributed weight you have, the more stable the top platform will be. But for me on this side, I just happen to have 2 very prolific varieties growing in the same direction. Another thing that I noticed here, I'm in Southern California, so I'm fortunate to have access to some rot-resistant wood that's not pressure treated. So this right here is redwood. This right here is redwood. And then I mixed it up because this is what was available at Home Depot. But this right here, this is cedar. A couple things I noticed about cedar. One, it's cut at a sharper angle right here. It's more squared off, whereas the redwood has more of a rounded edge. I know it's kind of hard to pick up on a camera, but I had to go ahead and sand that down a little bit. And even with that little bit of sanding, I still feel like this is too sharp of an edge. As the branches grow over, I'm concerned that that edge will start to cut into the dragon fruit. So far, so good. I can always provide a little bit of padding underneath, but that was a concern that I have, and I think that's nothing bad about the wood. It's just a little bit of extra prep work with the cedar. Another thing that I'm noticing is right over here, some of the branches that are starting to grow over are yellowing right as they touch the top of the frame. And I'm not noticing that discoloration on any of the other varieties. So I got to thinking, what could be the cause? And I just happened to be out here the other day, in the middle of the day when the sun was at its most intense point, and I could feel that the cedar was significantly warmer than the redwood. Now, I haven't really dove deep into the material properties of redwood versus cedar, but I am realizing here, just by the touch test, that cedar is running a lot hotter, and you can see that scarring here with purple haze. So this was a quick fix until I figure out what I want to do long term, but I put a little piece of mulch underneath just to provide a little bit of insulation, because I am starting to see some yellowing, and eventually this will die back. And as I look around, I'm noticing a similar pattern on the other varieties. So I know it's not just purple haze. I know it's not just that one variety. I now realize that, oh, this cedar's running hotter. So the trellis that I made last year, I may have to scrap entirely. So if you are building this in Southern California, choose redwood over cedar, or if you do cedar, maybe you can paint it a more reflective color, like white or gray. Something that isn't going to retain the heat like the bare wood is. So there's a little bit of advice for you. A couple things about fruiting. I have a lot of flower buds, and I'm really happy to say that one of them has taken, and this is G1. This is the first time I'm going to try out G1. G1 was shaped as if it required cross-pollination. The flower, the point of pollination was pointing outwards. However, I pollinated it with its own pollen, and either that worked or potentially another pollinator at night allowed for that flower to turn into fruit. So you can tell there, based on the color difference there, you get that distinct color difference between the yellow here and the green here, that line that's formed. That's an early indication that your flower has become pollinated. I noticed that pretty early on, and luckily that one has taken. So that should be ready in a few months, maybe 60 days or so. And then as I pan across Sugar Dragon, which has grown, and I've pruned Sugar Dragon back quite a few times, it actually is starting to fruit. And these are the first 4 that have gone to flower. These actually flowered while I was on vacation, so I didn't have a chance to hand pollinate them. Fortunately though, so far, it looks like I didn't need to hand pollinate them at all, because it looks like 1, 2, 3, all 4 were pollinated successfully, and I'll have 4 Sugar Dragon over there. Now if I go around to the other side, which is also a Sugar Dragon branch, there are a number of other flower buds that are emerging. So I'll get a chance to see Sugar Dragon flower. I'll be home for these, but I've got maybe another 8 flower buds on there. A couple other varieties that I've had a lot of success with. I mentioned Cosmic Charlie earlier. That one flowered and produced about a half dozen fruit for me last year. And I think I had a few Physical Graffitis as well. If I come over and look at Physical Graffiti now, yep, I have a few flower buds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see where the old one was last year, right here. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more that will flower this year. So that's exciting. So those are some of the returns. Some of the fruit that I've heard a lot about that have not flowered yet is the Diego's Desert King seedling. I actually picked up this variety from a dragon fruit exchange through my local California Rare Fruit Grower organization. There was a huge table set up at one of the meetings, and there was probably hundreds of dragon fruit cuttings and maybe 50 or 60 different varieties to choose from. And I spoke to the guy behind the counter. I said, tell me which one you would get that most people would pass over. They don't know how good it is. It's sort of like a hidden gem. And he said the Diego's Desert King seedling. So he went ahead and gave me this guy. I carried this out, poking myself all along the way. This is one of the thornier varieties that I have. And it has grown tremendously, but it has not produced any flowers yet. So I am waiting patiently. I've heard really great things about this. If you are growing Diego's Desert King seedling, go ahead, leave me a comment. Let me know what I have to look forward to. A couple other varieties that I'm really excited about. The yellow variety. When I see those in the store, those are the one of the only dragon fruit varieties that I'll actually buy in the store. I think that they taste delicious, even if they're store-bought. All the rest of them I'll pass on because I don't think they taste as well. They're not as fresh. They're not picked when they're fully ripe. But the yellows, those are my absolute favorite. So once those get going, I will be a very, very happy camper. That's what I've got going here as far as dragon fruit is concerned. A couple other notes here. If you are growing dragon fruit where there are chickens, like I am, I go ahead and I cage off my pots because they love to get in the pots and scratch around and kick out all of the dirt that I have in the pots. So I went ahead and just put a little wire mesh to discourage them. And then my chickens also like to jump and pick at fruit that's low hanging. So I went ahead and put another cage around my sugar dragon flowers that are now set. And that just helps discourage the chickens. So if you're wondering why I cage those off, it's my chickens that would cause a mess if I didn't have them there. Other things to note about these pots, I would highly encourage you to visit your local hydroponics store if you're trying to purchase these pots on the cheap. If you go to a nursery, they'll charge you, I think, 2-3 times as much. These are really, really cheap if you go to a hydroponics store. They've got them in the back, and I was really glad that I did that. A couple other things. I was rotating these to give these dragon fruit varieties equal sun exposure. I can no longer do that because the roots have grown out the bottom of the pots. If I try to turn the pots, I'll snap the roots. I can do that. There's nothing preventing me from snapping those roots, but I prefer not to. So these dragon fruit are very well established. They're so established that the roots have gone through the pots. So just be prepared for that. If you are growing them in dirt, they will find a way down into your dirt. So pick a spot that you think will be their permanent home and be ready for them to grab hold of the ground once you give them a year or two in the ground. This guy right here, I was still rotating this, but at this point, I think the roots have even gone through on my most recent one. So I hope some of this information was helpful about the wood to choose, about which varieties are pretty prolific, at least the ones that I'm growing. Sugar Dragon is leading the way, the most amount of flowers by far. I'm giving away Sugar Dragon branches because every time I turn around, I get another one, and they run maybe 3, almost 4 feet long. So they're these big, massive branches. Pretty impressive when you go ahead and give that to a friend and say, here, try growing this. Physical Graffiti has worked out. Cosmic Charlie has worked out. Still waiting on Diego's Desert King. Still waiting on my most recent planting, which was last year. Although if you look here, we do have some purple haze flowers, so that's super cool. These will be the first 2 fruit coming from my most recent trellis. So you can get fruit within a year if you get lucky, but in my experience, 2 years and now definitely going into the 3rd year seems to be the sweet spot for dragon fruit. Once you plant it, give it 3 years and you'll get yourself some nice fruit. Let me know if you have any comments. I know that there's a lot of dragon fruit enthusiasts here in San Diego County and actually all throughout the world. So if I'm doing something here that you like, or if you have any suggestions for me about things that you've learned that maybe I can benefit from, go ahead, leave me a comment. I'd love to chat with you. Thank you.